Okay, I'd like you to go into your CMS folder and in the resource folder in the Logic 9s folder you will find a lesson called '05 Funky Groove. Okay, so you need to go into that and open it up, and first of all, before you do anything, just make sure you go to File, Save As, and save it into your CMS folder so that you are editing just your own copy. Okay, so we're going to look at programming and editing MIDI in Logic today. Okay, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with the piano roll editor and see what functions we've got in there for doing more than just adding notes in and stuff. So first of all, we're going to look at creating notes with the pencil tool. Okay, so in the piano roll editor, you create notes by clicking in the grid with the pencil tool. As you write your musical part using the pencil tool, you can also use it to resize, move, copy, or delete notes. Okay, so we're going to use the pencil tool to program a simple bass line in the key of A minor using only the white keys on the musical keyboard. Okay, so if we go to our session, and we can see that cycle mode is turned on and the cycle area spans the first 2 bars. We're going to write a 2-bar bass line, so leave the cycle mode on and listen to the drums. So we have a listen to the drums. Okay, looks like my computer couldn't handle it for a second there, but yours should be okay. Yes, once you've done that, in the arrange area, make sure that the attitude bass track is selected. So as you can see, mine's selected here. We're going to use the pencil tool, which is currently the command click tool. If you remember, the command click tool is this one up here on the right hand side, so it's your right click tool. Or if you press command, if I hover over the piano roll editor, not the arrange area, you can see that I've got the same tool selected for this area, the piano roll editor, as I've got for the arrange area. So we can have different tool sets for each. Okay, and as you can see, we've got the arrow tool as the left click tool, and we've got the pencil tool as the command click tool. So if I press command, it changes to the pencil. Okay, we're going to command click in the first bar of the attitude bass track, and what that does is it creates an empty MIDI region, which we're going to resize to be 2 bars long, like so. Okay, I'm just going to turn off my automatic cycle set locators for my cycle mode so that it stays at 2 bars and doesn't follow whatever I've got selected. Okay, so in the editing area, the piano roll editor displays the contents of the selected attitude bass region, which is currently empty. You can use the piano keyboard on the left to audibly preview the notes before you create them. So as we can see over here, we can play notes and see what they sound like. Okay, we're going to find the note A1, which is 2 white keys below C2. So here's C2 here. We're going to need to scroll down a bit. A1 is here, 2 notes below C2. Probably can't hear that on my machine. Okay, and I'm just going to save my own file because I'm listening to it from a CD at the moment. It's probably why it's taking a lot of CPU power. So I'm just going to save it in here. As you can see, I've used this before, so I'm going to call it Funky Groove 2. Into my own file. Okay, so while that's doing that, I'll just explain the next step. So in the piano roll editor, we're going to make the pencil tool the left click tool instead of the arrow tool, and we're going to make the velocity tool the command click tool. Okay, so the pencil tool and the velocity tool work really well together. Okay, So now that that's done, we can press escape while we're in the piano roll editor, and we're going to choose pencil tool just as a left click tool. We're going to press escape again, and this time we're going to choose the velocity tool. We're going to hold down the command button and select the velocity tool, and that, as you can see over here, makes it so that our velocity tool is now the left click tool. The command click tool, and our pencil tool is the left click tool. Okay, so you can always see where you're at, because if we look here in terms of the notes we're selecting, we can see which note is there. And as you look, as I drag this around, you can see different notes here. And I can go down and find A1 there. Okay, so we've got A1. We know where A1 is. So the next thing we're going to do is actually going to place an A1 on the first note of the first bar, okay, at 1 1 1 1, and you can see where I'm placing it in the same places where it's telling me what note it is, in that little finder there, in that viewpoint. So I'm just going to click in a note there, and we're going to resize it. So if I just hover over one edge of it here, we can see the resize tool. We're going to drag it towards the right to lengthen the note to make it a quarter note. A quarter note is a quarter of a bar. Okay, so a quarter of the first bar here is there. Okay, and we can see that the help tag shows us that the note length is 0.100, which is, or period 100, which indicates that the length as no bars, one beat, no divisions, and no ticks. In other words, a single quarter note. Okay, so I can let go there. We're going to insert a C2 note on 1 2 1 1, which is the second beat. So C2 at 1 2 1 1. Remember to watch the info display as you position the pencil tool. Okay, a quarter note is inserted into C2. The pencil tool always inserts notes of the same length and velocity as the last note selected with the pencil tool. But we're going to shorten that note so that it's 1/8 long. Okay, so 1/8 is half the 16th note. There we go. Also, while you resize an eighth note, you can also hold down Control Shift to disable snapping. I'll just show you that again. So if I take this back to a quarter note, and then I hold down Control and Shift, and I drag it, it allows me to make much more precise lengths of that note, and it allows me to really refine that as much as I want to by taking off and disabling the snap. Okay, but you don't necessarily want to disable the snap right now, so I'm just going to put that at the right point. But actually, I need to press Control and Shift in order to get it to the right point. Okay, as you can see, as I'm dragging it over that line, it says point, period, 2 0. And that's where I want it to be, just to make sure it's exactly right. Okay. Instead of creating a note and then resizing it, you can hold down the pencil tool to insert the note and then drag the tool left or right to resize the note, and this allows you to insert and resize a note in one action. So we can hold down the pencil tool to create an A1 on 1 2 3 1 right after the last note, and drag towards the left to shorten the note to 1/16th note. Okay, so half of that note again. So A1 1 2 3 1, and I'm going to drag it. I'm going to hold it down just to insert it and then drag it. Okay, so it's period 1 0, and that's 1/16th note. Okay. So depending on your zoom level, you may have to hold down Control Shift as you drag the pencil tool to disable snapping. I didn't need to, but depends. If you're zoomed out further, you may need to. Okay, we're going to hold down the pencil tool to insert an E1 note right on the 1 2 4 1 measure. So E1 is above C, so C D E1 there. as you can see. That's reading as E1. So right after the last note, 1, 2, 4, 1. And we're going to drag to lengthen it to a quarter note. So as you remember, a quarter note is that so period 1 0 0. Okay, let me let go. Okay, so we've got a bass riff now. If I solo that, we can have a listen to it. Excellent. Okay, we've done that. So now we're going to look at copying and deleting notes. Okay, so we can copy, delete any of the notes in piano roll editor very, very easily. Okay, so we're going to use the pencil tool to copy the 1 bar bass riff to bar 2 and delete a note to change the second riff. Make sure that the piano roll editor has key focus, which we can see it has because it's got the halo around it. That means it's in key focus. And we're going to choose Command A to select all. Okay. Now we're going to copy that bass riff. So when you position the pencil tool over the middle of a note, it turns to a pointer tool. So as we go there, you see it turns into a pointer tool. And we can use the pointer tool to move the notes, or Option drag to copy the notes. So I'm going to hold down Option and I'm going to drag those over so they start on bar 2. Okay. If you want to be more precise so it doesn't move anywhere, we can hold down Shift to limit the drag into one single direction, either horizontal or vertical. Okay. There we go. So we've now got the same riff there as well. Okay, holding Shift down while you Option drag the selection will ensure that you don't accidentally copy the notes to another pitch. Alright, so we're going to Option drag the whole sections to 1 1 1 like I've just done. And to align the copy of the riff on 2 1 1, watch the help tag and also the vertical and horizontal white dash guidelines that appear when you drag a note to make sure that it's in the same place. But visually, you can see it's in the same place there. Okay, so we're going to choose Shift Command A to deselect all. So none of the notes are selected. And we're going to double click the first A1 note of the second bass riff. And that deletes it. Okay, now we can listen back to that bass line if I solo it again. Okay, so we can get an idea of how that's going to sound with the actual riff. Okay, you can't hear the bass notes too well on here because my speakers are not representing those frequencies, but you'll hear them on your headphones as you're following this. Okay, so we're going to look at editing note velocity now. When you play a MIDI keyboard, you need to control how loud each note is played, and that's called the velocity. Okay, it's the speed at which the MIDI keyboards measure the speed at which the key is depressed. Okay, so when you press a key, the MIDI keyboard sends a note on MIDI event that contains the pitch and velocity values of that note. Higher velocities usually result in louder notes, and depending on the patch or program you're using, higher velocities can also trigger different sounds or even different samples as they do in the sampler instrument you're using on the Attitude bass track. So the result will sound more real as the higher velocity notes trigger samples of a bass string that was actually plucked harder. So it's, the actual audio recordings in the first place, they made different ones and some were played harder, and so it triggers those harder plucked samples the louder the velocity gets. So we've got the velocity tool assigned to our command click tool. You want to use this to edit the velocities of the bass notes to extend the dynamic range. Okay, so if we command drag the first bass note up and down, we can see how this is affecting, using the velocity tool and the command tool. You can hear it, and it's changing colour as well, respectively. So we can see the more red it is, the more harder it is, and once we get down low, more towards purple and blue it is, the softer it is. Okay. You can also see the value of that velocity as well in the help tag. Okay. So there we go. The velocity goes up to plus 25 or minus 101. Okay. So in the help tag, you can see the value of the note velocity, which actually ranges from 1 to 127. Actually, you can't see it in there. It's just after. Actually, you can see it in there. It's just after where it says A1. That's the note velocity, and that's the full velocity there. We can see that it's red. Okay, so adjust the velocities of the other notes. Have a little, play around with it. Normally, we'll adjust notes that are on the accents. So maybe like the first notes, or sometimes the last notes, a little bit, so we can get a sound. If I solo that, we can hear that. That's a bit harsh. Maybe that needs to come down a little bit. Or if I select this one and then hold down Shift and select this one, then I hold the Command down, I might want to just adjust those velocities up a little bit. And take this one down a little bit. Listen to that. Again, it's a bit off, so experiment with it. Experiment with what you think sounds right, and just try it out. Okay, so if you just do that for a couple of minutes, and then come back to this when you're ready. So, okay, if we choose Command Shift A to deselect all. So when the velocity tool is used on multiple notes, all of the note velocities are offset by the same amount, as I just showed you. So you could get them all sounding with the right difference between the velocities, and then select all, and then change them all. For example, so I could say Command All, Command A, hold down my Command tool, and I could change the velocity of everything, at the same time. And that way, it gives you maximum flexibility. Okay, so that's the velocity tool. If you don't want to hear the velocity changing, as you can hear, it's constantly changing like that. But if you were listening to this in playback mode, you wouldn't want it to keep changing. So you can turn that off by deselecting the MIDI out button there, and then that way you can play it and change things. But you don't hear it repeating each time. Whereas if that's in, it will keep looping the sound that you're trying to change the velocity of to preview what that velocity is like. So if you don't want that, just take it off. The MIDI out button there deselects that, so you can adjust them in real time without it affecting the sound as you're listening to it. Okay, so we're going to look at importing a MIDI file now and see what we can do with that. So to import any MIDI file into an existing project, we just drag the MIDI file to a track. And you can actually just do this from the Finder window. We can do it from our browser window, which we can access by pressing F on our keyboard, or by going to the Media Lists area up here and choosing Browser, the Browser tab. Okay, so you will find this in your Resources Logic 9 folder with the lessons and additional media, whereas I'm going to have to find it where I save this, which is actually in this folder, Funky Groove. So you go to your Funky Groove folder, and inside that you should have audio files and other things, but the actual media file that you're going to need to find will be in the additional media folder in Logic 9 Files, Media, Additional Media. Okay, so I'm going to search for mine. I'm going to look for it on the actual disk here. Logic 9 files, media, additional media, and we can see here the piano.mid MIDI region. Okay, so to import it, we just drag it in. So I'm going to drag that into the first bar there on the Suitcase V2 track. Okay, that's been dragged in. I'm just going to command save that, so I've now got that in my own files. Take it off solo. Actually, we can put it back on solo and just listen to it. Just wait for it to start. Okay, it doesn't want to start yet. It'll come in a minute. That's one easy way to import MIDI files, which have already got MIDI contained on them. Okay, so we're going to look at editing a recorded MIDI sequence now. Obviously, that's a MIDI sequence all on its own. So when opening a MIDI performance in the piano roll editor, you can see all of the imperfections. Some of the notes shouldn't have been played, and some are sustained for too long. So from here, we can polish the performance. So in the current project, the piano region includes several elements that could be improved. First, the two blue A notes on the fourth downbeat of measure 1 in the piano editor, in the piano roll editor here for the piano track. If we just have that one selected and then look in the piano roll editor and press Command A to select all, and then whoops, sorry, we've got to be in the piano roll editor for that. I'm just going to press Escape twice to enter the arrow tool, and now I've got key focus in the piano roll editor. I'm going to go back here, select this region, go back into here, Command A to select all, and then press Z to zoom to fit so I can see everything. And we can see these two notes just here as the ones I was just talking about. They play at the same time as the snare, so for one reason or another we might not want that. So we can mute them. We can get rid of them, but we can also press M on our keyboards, and that temporarily mutes them, because we might decide later on that we want to keep them in, and they'll be gone. If we delete them, they'll just be gone. So I'm just going to mute them just to preview what it sounds like without them. Okay, the notes are dimmed, which indicates they are muted. So although the notes are still present in the region, they will not trigger any MIDI events. So this way we can experiment with removing notes non-destructively in MIDI regions. Okay, so you just have to press M to mute them. It's very easy. Or you can use the mute tool. So we can go into Escape, and we can choose the mute tool. It's tool number 7. I prefer just to use M on the keyboard, and then that way I've got more tools at my disposal very easily. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to look at the quantize tool. So if we press Escape and choose the quantize tool, tool number 8, we're going to drag to select the first two notes here, which we can see are a little bit out of time. So I'm just going to drag over those to select them, just like that. And if we hold down one of the notes, we'll see that the quantize menu appears. Okay, we're going to choose 1/4 note. What it does is it conforms, as you can see, they just moved. It's conformed them to the nearest quarter note, which was bar 1111. Okay, which has made it a little bit tighter. The advantage of that is, we could just quantize the whole lot by going to Command A, select all, and then in the region parameter box up here, we could select a quantize for the whole of the of that region, but we don't want to do that because we only wanted to actually adjust those two, just those two there, right, at the start. So that's what we did. Okay, so that's that. We also need to look at the score editor, okay, which displays MIDI notes as a standard musical notation. So if you have classical training, this could be useful to you. If not, it still could be useful to you because it's another way of inputting things. Okay, so we can use in the score we can use link modes. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you about what link modes are. If you go down to the editor here and go to score, we can now view the score. Okay, the score editor opens in what we call content link mode and displays the contents of the piano region. Okay, the notes you are seeing are the same notes that you edited in the piano roll editor, but they're displayed as musical notation. Notice that the inspector updates to display a score parameters and a part box full of score symbols over here on the left hand side. Okay, we're going to use these in the next exercise to create notes on a staff. So in the arrange area, we're going to click the attitude bass region to select it. Okay, I've got it selected, just make sure that's selected. And now you see it tells us what we've got in that region. Okay, so whatever we've got selected, it represents that as a score because we're in content link mode. So when you unlink an editor, it will keep displaying the same contents independently of your actions in other areas. This is useful when you need to manipulate regions in the arrange area without changing what the MIDI editor displays. So in the score editor, in the title bar, we're going to click the link button, which is this yellow button here. I'll just zoom in on that so you can see it. Okay, we're going to uncheck that. Okay, and that unlinks all of the content. Okay, we call that no link mode. So in the arrange area, we're going to select different regions, and you can see it's still displaying the same region as before because they're unlinked. Okay, in the score editor title bar, we're going to click the link button again, and this time it goes purple. This indicates that the score editor is in now the same level link mode. Okay, same level link. The score editor now displays the contents of all MIDI regions in the arrange area. On the top staff, the high notes are hidden under the title bar. You can drag the first clef vertically down to move the staves down. So if you drag the first clef just down, and just down again, and now we can see all of the notes that were up the top. Okay, obviously we've only got a limited view here. We may need to drag those down just to see all of the notes. Okay, if we double click the link button, it takes us back to content link mode. So we're going to create a horn line in the score editor. Okay, we now use the score editor program to create a simple horn line, but first we need to create a new software instrument track and load a horn channel strip. Okay, so we're going to go and select a new track, software instrument track, create. And in the library over here, we're going to go to library, go back to the first menu, we're going to choose 08 pop horns and funk horn section, and that loads the samples for that particular instrument. Okay, if you play a few notes of that, we can hear it. Okay, we're going to command click in bar 1 of the studio horns track. So command brings up the pencil tool, remember, in this area, and we've got a region there. I'm just going to resize that to 2 bars. I want you to do the same. Okay, so we're going to zoom in the score editor by dragging its vertical slide zoom slider at the bottom right. So just down here, we can zoom into it like so, using that. Okay, so we can see a little bit clearer what we're doing. Okay, in the score editor, you can insert notes and symbols by just dragging them to the staff from the part box. So in the part box, we're going to drag a quarter note, so crotchet, which is one of these. So we're going to do that. We're going to drag a quarter note to the upper staff as an A3 at 1111. Okay, so just going to drag it in. We can see it's telling us there is A3 at 1111. We can read that in the help tag. Okay, so we can obviously hear the pitch as well. The inserted note is a few ticks shorter than a quarter note. This is done to avoid creating overlap notes in the score editor because it causes problems visually and technically as well. So the note is green, and this indicates that it's selected. Okay, if you click in the background, the note is deselected and turns black again. So click anywhere in the background, turns black again. Okay, so you could continue to drag notes in the part box, but in the score editor it's usually easier to copy existing notes, which we can do just by using Alt drag, okay, or Option drag. So we can Option drag the A3 note to A2, one octave below at 2111. So I'm going to hold it down, select it, hold down Alt, and drag that down to A2 at bar 2111. Okay, it's being a little bit tricky with me. I'm just going to drag one in. Over here at 2111. There we go. That's an A flat. Or an A sharp or a B flat. I want A. There we go. So that's an octave lower. Let's just, if we listen to that. Okay. Got the two notes in there like that. So just do that. Okay. We're going to add a 16th note now to G2 at 1411. Okay, so this is A2, G2 is one below it. We get a 16th note there. 16th note is one of these. Looks, it's got the two tails on it. Okay, that's a quarter note, that's an 8th note, half of that, and that's a 16th note, half of that. So I'm going to drag that in. We're going to put it at 1441. Okay. There we go. Okay, don't know why it didn't do that. Let's try that again. One, 4, 4, 1. There we go. That's what it sounds like. Okay, so drop that in at 1441. And it looks as though it's going to be dropped inside the second bar, but it won't be. Okay, so just follow my lead on that, and it should look like what I've got there. Okay, it's filled in the gaps in between with rest notes here, being 2, 1. So 2 plus 1 is 3, 3.5 plus a quarter, 3 3/4 plus another quarter, 4. Okay, that makes up 4 beats in a bar. So there you go, we got that. Okay, we can see them in the piano editor based as represented as beams. If I press P and then Command A and Z to zoom in, we can see where they are now, represented as lines in the piano roll editor. Okay, so you can adjust the studio horns volume to suit yourself. Have a little listen to it, and then we're going to look at editing notes with a MIDI keyboard. Okay, so you can adjust the pitch and velocity of selected notes using your MIDI controller keyboard. The notes will retain their position and length, and they will update their pitch and velocity according to the note you played on the MIDI keyboard. In this exercise, we're going to use your MIDI keyboard to experiment with the pitch and velocity of the horn notes you just entered in the score editor. So in the arrange area, make sure the studio horns track is record enabled. So here it's record enabled, it's red, make sure it's record enabled. At the bottom of the editing area, we're going to click the score button again. just down here. And let's just adjust that so we can see it. Okay, if I click the first note, I'm just going to deselect everything and click the first note. The note turns green to indicate it's selected, obviously, and you hear it. At the top of the score editor, we're going to double click the MIDI in button, which is this button here. So just quickly double click it, and it goes black on the inside. Okay. The MIDI button in is the button you clicked to activate step input recording. You might remember. When you double click the MIDI in button, the MIDI connector icon inside the button turns black, and you can now edit the selected note's pitch and velocity using the MIDI keyboard itself. So if I play a note on my MIDI keyboard, if I bring mine up here, you can see it changes straight away. I'll just undo that. It will change that note according to the note you want to play. But obviously, I don't want to change the note, I just want to change the velocity. So I need to find that note on my keyboard. And that note, as you can remember, was A3. I'm not using the same keyboard as you, but I'm just going to select the right octave here. And hopefully, if I press H now, that should be the right note. No. I have to go up an octave. Maybe even up an octave, two octaves. There we go. Oh, one more. Up to octave 3. There we go. Okay, so depending on how I play that, that's going to change it. My velocity settings are down here, whereas on your keyboards you just play it softer and it will play it softer. But if I want to play it softer using this keyboard, I've got to adjust my velocity settings down here, my performance intensity settings. So I'm going to choose a very light mezzo piano, which is lightly, okay? So moderately light. Okay, mezzo piano. So I have to press C to enter that. And now if I press that note, you can hear it sounds very, very quiet. And that will change that now if I listen back to that. Yeah, so I've changed the velocity. You should be able to just do that by pressing the note harder or softer on your keyboards, though. You don't need to do what I just did unless you're using the tab keyboard like I did there, the caps lock keyboard rather. Okay, so doing that, the note is selected and is changed to the pitch and velocity of the MIDI note that you selected. Okay, so at the top of the score editor, we're going to click the MIDI in button to turn it to deselect it again. And in the arrange area, we're going to click the attitude bass track header. Okay, the attitude bass track is selected and record enabled. We're going to make sure of that by just fully enabling it. And we're going to double click the attitude bass region. Okay, that brings it up, that opens it up in the piano roll editor and displays the contents. So at the top of the piano roll editor, we're going to double click the MIDI in button again. So it goes black like we just did. At the top of the piano roll editor, where that is, we're going to select the first bass note and play a note on your MIDI keyboard. So I'll do that again. And it does the same thing. Okay. If the note you play is a very high pitch, the selected note will disappear from the visible area. So play a few lower pitches until the selected note reappears. And then find the original pitch. And on your MIDI keyboard, experiment by hitting it at various note velocities. And it does the same thing as it does in the score editor by doing that. Okay, so once you've had a go at that and you're comfortable with it, I'm going to deselect the MIDI in button to turn it off. Okay, and we're just going to come out of that now, and the next video will be looking at editing note velocity using the hyperdraw. So we'll just leave that there for now.